Welcome back. All right, so we're less than 2 months away from the trade deadline, and we're going to start seeing some movement soon. General managers frustrated with the inability to get deals done because of salary cap reasons. Teams have been doing what they can to build up that cap so that at the deadline they can acquire players. Now, there's also the possibility that teams on the board here retain some salary in order to make these moves happen. So I've got these arranged. I've got the top 10 according to The Athletic in regards to who is, going to be in most demand and all that. I will also look at other players in coming days and weeks because we're going to see guys move. Starting off with Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat's cap hit of $5.5 million is a bargain. What's interesting is he has 28 goals, 14 assists, 42 points in 37 games. He's 27 years of age. He's in his prime. So he has every right to get paid and every reason to ask for whatever he's asking for. What's interesting is that the idea is out there that somehow Vancouver management has decided to move on from Horvat, that they chose Miller over Horvat. There's been no consideration that I've seen that maybe Horvat's demands are a lot higher. We don't know what Horvat's looking for. We don't know how much. We don't know how long. And that's the interesting part to me is that because Bo Horvat's been a good captain to the team. And again, it's that polarization against JT Miller that we see from the fan base. I don't think the question gets asked enough of, well, what exactly is Horvat looking for? We know that there's been no negotiations recently. Horvat's agent has said so. So how high is the ask from Horvat? And I think that's a valid question to ask. One video I do want to make at some point soon is on whether or not losing a big player. Like last night I heard Ian McIntyre say in between periods, well, they can't afford to lose Horvat and not get back something that would add up to what Horvat brings to the team. I would counter with the fact that I don't think any one player is bigger than the team. I love Horvat. I think he's a great captain. I hope the Canucks keep him. I really don't want to see him get traded. But no one player is bigger than the team. And there are definitely some exceptions. I wouldn't necessarily put Horvat into that category. He's having a great year. It's likely a year that he will not repeat. Remember, he's due for a contract. And so for people who want to see the Canucks throw money at Horvat and give him that 8-year extension, because odds are he wants 8 years that would take him into his mid-30s, the reality is those contracts, there's always that risk there. And if it's, let's say $9.5 million over 8 years, that could be a little bit of a problem. And again, if the Canucks, as they're currently put together, aren't good enough to win and get to the playoffs, how much is Horvat going to be worth, or do you move him? And again, Horvat's going to get you more back than Miller would have if neither of them were signed right now. So I think Horvat's going to get a pretty big return for the Canucks. I think it's going to be a return that Canuck fans immediately get angry about because it won't be what they want, or there might be a prospect in there, they don't know who it is, that kind of thing. But I do trust Patrick Allvin. He's a new GM, and he's only a year into the job, so I'm not panicking about anything with the Canucks at this point. Jacob Chychrun. His contract, of course, $4.6 million is his cap hit until 2025. That's very reasonable. Since returning from injury, he's played 20 games, 5 goals, 13 assists, 18 points. He's a +9. On the Arizona Coyotes, he's a +9 20 games in. He's on pace. If he played an 80-game season, +36. He's also 24 years of age. There's a reason that Jacob Chychrun is mentioned a lot. And it's because he's really a solid defensive defenseman and a good offensive defenseman. So if you hear anybody say, well, he's just pure offense, then they don't watch his game because he's very good at both ends of the ice. Chychrun is a fantastic blue liner, and I think there's going to be a team that picks him up that is going to be very happy with him. Unless we end up in a situation where he goes to a team where his style just doesn't mix. But I don't know how that would be possible because he plays really a complete game, 200-foot game, and he's underrated right now. I do think he's probably talked about a little bit much, but he is underrated right now. Patrick Kane, $10.5 million. He is 34 years of age. 37 games, 7 goals, 20 assists, 27 points. He is not the offensive dynamo he was very recently. However, I would expect that after a trade, he will get that bump. We do see players have that first 10, 15 games with the new team. They're excited. They're glad to be in a playoff hunt slash Stanley Cup run, and they play really well and they put up a bunch of points. I would expect that with Patrick Kane. So while the advanced stats would tell you he's really slowed down, and he has, I would also counter with, I don't know if there's a motivation issue right now with Chicago because they know that they're going into a rebuild, they're in a rebuild, or not. So there's a lot of decisions to be made with Kane. That $10.5 million cap hit, there's no way Chicago doesn't have to eat some of that money on his contract and potentially on Taves as well. But we'll get to Timo Meier next. So there is still some confusion out there, so let's clear that up. Timo Meier's 26 years of age and 39 games, 21 goals, 17 assists, 38 points. He got off to a slow start, and he's on pace for 40 goals. So Meier's worth the $6 million cap hit and then some. Now, his qualifying offer is still $10 million. There were rumors that changed with the new CBA. It has not. That does not get it. Basically, the $10 million qualifying offer still exists because he signed that contract before the new CBA. He's 26 years of age. I think Timo Meier is a fantastic forward. He has had a great season for the San Jose Sharks. Even when he wasn't producing, he was still playing well. He was still generating chances. So I expect Meier to be a popular target, and just because the qualifying offer is $10 million does not mean he makes $10 million a year. It means that's what he'd have to qualify him at, and then he could accept it, and then he's a year away from free agency. Now, I would say I'm not going to rule out an extension. The one thing is Mike Grier may not do things the same way Doug Wilson did. So while Erik Karlsson stuck around and we saw Tomas Hertl stick around, we may not see the same with Meier. San Jose, if they decide to move him at the deadline, there will be a lot of takers for Timo Meier. He is worth multiple top-notch pieces. So like a first-round pick, a really good prospect, maybe a bottom six roster player kind of situation, younger roster player. I could see San Jose pulling off a monster deal for Meier. And I'm being conservative in estimating what they could get for him because, again, he's 26. They do have negotiating rights, right? He's still a restricted free agent, and he's putting up about a point per game after a slow start. So, fantastic player. Jonathan Taves, $10.5 million his cap hit. Of course, that's expiring this summer. He's also 34 years of age. 36 games, 11 goals, 9 assists, 20 points. Now, the point totals aren't fantastic, but that's not Taves' game at this point. At this point, he's a good 20-goal scorer. Like, he's on pace for 20-plus goals. And he's an excellent face-off man. So basically, in an ideal situation, I think he'd be stepping in as a number 3 center for a contending team. Think along the lines of like Pittsburgh when they were, in 2016 and 2017, so darn good. It was down the middle that they got it. So I could see Taves being a target for a team that needs a face-off guy. Team that struggles with face-offs, especially late in games, would be targeting Jonathan Taves. The cap hit does make it difficult, but Chicago may take back a bad contract or two to make sure that Kane and Taves go while they're getting back first-round picks as well, because Chicago is in the full rebuild, thus the Chicago jersey, This is a Chris Chelios jersey, though. But, yeah, Taves, I don't think they'll get the same return on Taves that they get on Kane, but Kane could be a really good value addition for a team. Again, more of a depth role for Taves than Kane. I don't think it's a top 6 role for Taves. I think it's a third-line role, and I think it's a top 6 role for Kane. He ends up on a first line somewhere, and he produces a bunch of points. On this side of the board, you got John Klingberg. His cap hit's $7 million. A bit problematic in that he's 30 years of age, 31 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists, 11 points. The $7 million is probably a little bit high for some teams. But again, Minnesota can eat some of that money, and Klingberg's contract expires after this season. So everybody on this board is a rental, with the exception of Meier, Chychrun, and Besser. And this is just the reality of the market now, that you're going to see a lot of rentals. So Klingberg, likely a rental at the deadline, probably to a contending team. Maybe a team like Pittsburgh looks at him if Petry's not going to be back. That kind of, just using that as an example. But yeah, Klingberg can be very good, and I think he's been good since returning from injury, but the numbers may still scare some teams off. Ryan O'Reilly, of course, is hurt. Him and Vlad Tarasenko listed back-to-back, again by The Athletic. O'Reilly, $7.5 million. Tarasenko, $7.5 million. That's $15 million coming off St. Louis's books. And honestly, at this point, St. Louis might be looking to do some kind of a retool. St. Louis has never been scared of this before. Losing core guys has never bothered them. They've usually been able to add and replace guys, and it works pretty well for them. So O'Reilly's numbers are not great. 37 games, 10 goals, 6 assists, 16 points. His plus-minus is miserable. He's 31 years of age. However, if your team is looking for, much like here with Taves, a guy who might be a good third-line center for you, a guy who can go out there and play a leadership role, and if you can't get Taves, or if you're looking for a little bit less money that you have to worry about, or Ryan O'Reilly might be your guy. So the same teams that are in on Taves may end up in on O'Reilly. And so it might be one of those situations. Vlad Tarasenko, on the other hand, is quite a different player. Still $7.5 million, also 31 years of age. 34 games, 10 goals, so the same amount of goals as O'Reilly. 19 assists, 29 points. So Tarasenko's generating more offense when healthy. Of course, both O'Reilly and Tarasenko injured currently. And so that's problematic for St. Louis if they want to get a maximum return for these guys. I can almost guarantee that first-round draft picks are going to be pretty heavily invested in, and teams are going to want those this year. This year's draft's considered pretty deep, so I could see St. Louis wanting to get first-rounders, at least for O'Reilly, maybe for Tarasenko as well. We have seen teams pay first-round draft pick prices for guys that we didn't expect in previous years. I'm thinking about mostly with Tampa has been good with that. Paying first-round draft pick for guys who, look like they're going to be depth guys. But it's worked out pretty well for Tampa. 3 straight Stanley Cup appearances and all. And I wouldn't rule out Tampa Bay trying to get one of the guys on this board. I don't know how they're going to do it either, but it's Tampa Bay, so if there's a way, they'll find a way to do it. Then there's Vladislav Gavrikov. Now, what's interesting to me is Gavrikov's cap hit's $2.8 million. That is very reasonable. 36 games, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points. He's also 27 years of age. Gavrikov is a top 4 defenseman. I think he would be a really solid addition to another team. I do think that in Columbus, everybody's had a rough season. It's been overall just a tough year. Gavrikov's been pretty good, and I think that there'll be a line of teams looking at adding to the blue line, and notice Gavrikov's one of 3 defensemen on here, but he's the one with the most reasonable cap hit and an expiring contract. Chychrun's cap hit's fantastic. It's not an expiring contract, and while it's a great cap hit, you don't have to worry about next year's cap hit with Gavrikov, unless you want to sit down and work out an extension, which probably wouldn't be that $4.6 million Chychrun's making. It could be. If he hits the market, it absolutely could be, especially since he's 27 years of age currently. And then there's Brock Besser at the bottom of the board, and Brock being top 10 is it's too bad if Vancouver decides to move on from Besser, but I mean, there have been rumors going back at least 2.5 years about Besser. It goes back to the Benning era. $6.65 million is his cap hit until 2025. That's the problem right there. There's 2 more years on his contract, and in 29 games, he has 6 goals, 15 assists, 21 points. He is only 25 years of age. Absolutely capable of a bounce back. One of the younger players on this board, the only one younger being Chychrun. I think that for Besser, he's still a good forward. I think with the right line, he could absolutely work, and I know Minnesota's a team that's been tied to his name for years. There's the Besser for Dumba trade that we've heard in the rumor mill forever. In fact, Dumba's number 11 on the Athletic list. So for Besser, I would be very surprised if there's a big market for Besser until the offseason. The offseason, I think it'll pick up. I don't think much is going to happen with Besser this season. I think Vancouver fans are going to be probably pretty let down by how things go during the regular season, but I understand. Horvat's an unrestricted free agent. Luke Schenn, who's not on the board, not a top 10, is likely going to go as a UFA. But for guys who have term like Besser, you might be better off waiting until the summer. Teams will have money to spend, and the salary cap will know if it's going to go up. If it goes up substantially, it might make it easier to move Besser. So some of the moves that people want to see get made by Vancouver may not get made until this summer. But there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Which teams do you think end up making the move? Why does Kane end up with the Rangers? Why does Taves end up with, the Bruins? So let's say the Bruins find a way to bring in Taves to be their new third-line center. So you'd have Bergeron, Krejci, and Taves. It's an old center spot, but anyways, just throwing that out there. It's going to be an interesting trade deadline, and we'll see who gets picked up and who goes where. But let me know your predictions in the comment section below. And remember, if you come back after the trade deadline and edit it, we can see edited above the post, so you can't cheat. But let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.